Zuber and Company, fire forensic experts and forensic engineers. Seeking answers from ashes. Seeking answers.
Okay, so let's dive into a story that's about a fire, sure, but it's also about a fight for survival and a legal battle that went all the way to the top. This isn't just about some burnt-down building. This is about a landmark case that ended up rewriting the rules for anyone with an insurance policy, and that's probably most of us. Everything starts with this number right here, over 3.5 crore rupees. That's the insurance claim filed by a company called Orion Commerce after a truly devastating fire back in 2010. And this wasn't just a claim, it was really the first shot fired in a legal war that would drag on for over a decade. So picture this. It's the morning of September 25th, 2010. A fire breaks out at the headquarters of Orion Commerce. Now, this was a successful business, a big exporter of leather goods to brands you've definitely heard of, like Levi's and Tommy Hilfiger. And in just one morning, that fire caused catastrophic damage. The building, the machinery, all their stock, just gone. But hey, they did what you're supposed to do, right? They had multiple fire insurance policies with National Insurance Company. So to get back on their feet, they filed a claim, expecting the support that they'd been paying for all this time. But that's not what happened. The insurance company came back with a flat no. They completely rejected the claim. And that decision, well, it didn't just put out the company's hopes of rebuilding, it ignited a whole new battle, this time in a courtroom. So, what was their reason? Well, it was a technical but really powerful argument. They said the fire wasn't a covered occurrence under the policy. And their entire case was built on the findings of their final surveyor, basically an expert investigator they hired, who came to the conclusion that this fire was just not an accident. And this is where things get really interesting. I mean, look at this slide. You've got a direct contradiction at the very heart of the dispute. The first surveyor on the scene, he says, yeah, looks like an electrical short circuit. But then the final surveyor comes in and says, nope, not an accidental fire. I see multiple sources of ignition. Two experts, two totally different stories. All right, so things head to court. The insurance company lays out its case. And it basically rests on three main pillars, all designed to just completely dismantle Orion Commerce's claim. First, they said the fire was deliberately set. Suspicious. Second, they attacked the company's proof of loss, just dismissing all the detailed reports from architects and accountants as nothing more than estimates. And third, they found what they thought was a loophole, claiming that a bunch of high-value stuff, furniture, fixtures, and fittings weren't even covered by the policy. Okay, let's flip to the other side of the courtroom. How did Orion Commerce fight back against all this? Well, they didn't just show up with a good story. They came with a fortress of documentation. I mean, can you believe this number? They presented a staggering amount of proof to back up every single rupee of their claim. 5,855 pages of detailed day-to-day business records. And this wasn't just random paper, right? This was the real deal. We're talking cost sheets for every single product, purchase orders, stock logs, tax returns, and this is crucial, emails from huge clients like Levi's and Benetton canceling massive orders because of the fire. This was a real-time, undeniable picture of their loss. And on the cause of the fire? They pushed back hard. They reminded the court that the first professionals on the scene, not just the preliminary surveyor, but also the local police, they both investigated independently and came to the same conclusion. The fire was accidental. So after winding its way through the lower courts for years, the case finally landed at the Supreme Court of India. The court had to cut through all the noise and answer three really fundamental questions that would decide the fate of this claim, and a whole lot of others in the future. First and foremost, was the fire accidental? And, maybe more importantly, who had to prove it? Did the business have to prove the exact cause of the fire just to get their claim paid? The court's answer on this was a total game changer. They ruled that, look, the policyholder doesn't have to prove what started the fire. As long as the insurance company can't prove that the policyholder themselves set the fire, the cause doesn't matter. It's considered an accident. The burden of proof for fraud is on the insurer, period. Okay, next up, what about all that disputed stuff? The furniture, fixtures, and fittings, that whole FFF thing that the insurer said wasn't part of the deal. So here, the court used a classic legal idea. They looked at the policy and said, wait a minute, if a term in a contract is confusing or ambiguous, it has to be interpreted to benefit the person who didn't write the contract. In this case, that's the business. The insurance company wrote the confusing policy, so they were on the hook. Yep, FF was covered. And finally, we get to the proof. Did that mountain of paper, all 5,855 pages of it, actually prove the value of everything that was lost? The court took a really close look at how that final surveyor calculated the damages, and they were not impressed. They found his whole method to be completely arbitrary, with absolutely no sound logic behind it. And this is the perfect example of how wild the logic was. The surveyor just slapped a flat value of 450 rupees on every single damaged item he found. It didn't matter what it was. A finished, high-value leather jacket was apparently worth the exact same as a simple polyester lining. I mean, come on, that makes no sense. So, in the end, the Supreme Court called the surveyor's work deeply flawed. They sided with the business and ruled that its detailed records, the cost sheets, the production logs, the purchase orders, were a far more accurate way to measure the loss than the surveyor's random guesswork. So after a decade of fighting, Orion Conmerx finally won. But why does this whole corporate legal saga matter to you? Whether you own a business or just have a policy for your car or your home. Well, this ruling really locks in 3 critical things for all of us. First, good faith is a two-way street. An insurer can't just deny your claim because they have a hunch. They have to actually prove you committed fraud. Second, documentation is power. Seriously, keep records. Your claim is only as strong as your proof. And third, try to read your policy, but know that the law is on your side when the language is confusing. Any ambiguity is going to be interpreted in your favor. And that brings us to a final thought. This was a case about a huge business with thousands of records, but the principle is the same for every single one of us. So just ask yourself, if a fire or a flood happened at your home today, where is the proof of what you own? Is it all just on a laptop that could be destroyed in the very disaster you need to make a claim for? Something to think about.